There was a sound America used to fall asleep to on a Friday night. Not silence. Not static. It was the low rumble of a V8 idling at a red light, 3 blocks from home, engine humming like it had somewhere to be even when it didn't. Before the internet gave us 1,000 ways to be seen, there was one stretch of asphalt in every town where you went to be seen for real. They called it the Strip, and on a Friday night, it was the closest thing small-town America had to a stage. This is the story of the golden age of cruising, back when the car wasn't just how you got somewhere. It was where you already were. To understand how this ritual was born, you have to go back to the years right after World War II. The soldiers came home, the GI Bill sent a generation to college and into brand new suburban neighborhoods, and for the first time in American history, the country had room to breathe. Highways stretched out where there used to be farmland. President Eisenhower's interstate system was creeping across the map, and Detroit was building cars faster, bigger, and cheaper than ever before. But here's the part that really mattered. For the first time, teenagers had their own money in their pockets, their own license in their wallet, and their own set of keys. A car wasn't just a tool for getting to work or hauling groceries anymore. It was an extension of who you were, and who you wanted people to think you were. And an extension of yourself needs an audience. So teenagers found one, on Main Street, on the Strip, in the same few miles of road that every town seemed to have, lined with drive-ins, gas stations, and neon signs that buzzed louder as the sun went down. Cruising looked simple from the outside. Just cars, moving slow, going nowhere in particular. But if you were part of it, you knew it was closer to a choreographed dance than a drive. You didn't cruise fast. You cruised at 15, maybe 20 miles an hour, just quick enough to keep the engine breathing, just slow enough to see who was leaning against the diner window, who was sitting on a hood, who might glance your way as you rolled by for the 3rd time that hour. They called it the curb crawl, and it worked a lot like the social feeds we scroll through now, except you couldn't fake it. You circled the block. You checked out who else was out. You noticed who was riding with who, and who had just shown up alone. Word traveled up and down that Strip faster than any headline, carried by nothing but rolled down windows and a slow parade of taillights. Then there was the moment everybody waited for, the red light challenge. 2 cars would roll up side by side, drivers glancing over, neither one saying a word. One driver would tap the gas, give the engine 2 or 3 quick revs, just enough noise to ask a question without asking it out loud. If the other driver revved back, the deal was sealed. The second that light turned green, that stretch of Main Street stopped being a cruising strip and became a drag strip, if only for a few hundred yards. But cruising wasn't only about who was fastest. It was just as much about who looked the best doing it. You didn't build your car to go unnoticed. You built it to be looked at. Big tail fins catching the streetlight. Chrome polished until it threw its own reflection. Lake pipes running down the side for that deep rumble. A 2-tone paint job, white wall tires, maybe a pair of fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror just because it looked right. If your car didn't turn a single head as it rolled by, you hadn't tried hard enough, and everybody on the Strip knew it. Of course, cruising needed a place to land, and that place was the drive-in. Not the movie kind, though those mattered too, but the drive-in restaurant, the dairy bar, the burger joint with the kerhoffs on roller skates gliding between rows of parked cars. You'd pull in, back your car into a spot, sometimes pop the hood just to let people admire the engine while you waited on a burger and a milkshake. It wasn't really about the food. It was the original car meet, decades before anyone thought to put that phrase on a flyer, and there was always music. The radio dial was locked onto whatever station was spinning Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and a little later, the Beach Boys, the sound leaking out of open windows and mixing with the hum of engines up and down the Strip. If the road was the stage, the radio was the soundtrack nobody had to ask for. It was just there, every Friday, like it belonged to the night itself. Every town had its own version of this loop, but the shape was always the same. Down Main Street, around the courthouse or the town square, past the drive-in, and back again, over and over, lap after lap. In places like Modesto, California, and Detroit, Michigan, that loop became something close to sacred. Nobody questioned why you drive the same 3 miles 15 times in one night. You did it because somewhere on lap number 11, you might catch the eye of somebody you'd been hoping to see since lap number 1. But nothing golden stays that way forever, and by the time the 60s rolled into the 70s, the mood on the strip had started to change. The energy crisis hit, and suddenly a car that drank 8 miles to the gallon wasn't something to be proud of anymore. Gas lines wrapped around city blocks. What used to be a badge of pride started to feel like something closer to a burden. At the same time, the cities themselves were losing patience. Business owners complained that all those slow-moving cars were clogging up traffic and keeping paying customers away. Police started treating cruising less like a tradition and more like a nuisance, handing out citations for reckless driving, for disturbing the peace, for the crime of simply driving the same loop one too many times. City councils passed ordinances outright banning cars from cruising the same route more than twice in a row. The very thing that made the strip feel alive, that endless, hopeful loop, became the thing that got you pulled over. And then came the mall. Air-conditioned, all under one roof, open late, with a food court that didn't care if it was raining or 100 degrees outside. Teenagers who used to spend their Friday nights behind a steering wheel started spending them by a fountain outside a department store instead. Main Street didn't get louder as the 80s wore on. It got quieter. The strip that used to be packed bumper to bumper by 9 o'clock started looking like any other street, just asphalt, streetlights, and the occasional car passing through on its way to somewhere else. For a while, it seemed like cruising might just fade into old photographs and older memories, something your grandfather brought up at dinner that nobody quite understood the feeling behind. But here's the thing about a tradition built on freedom. It has a way of finding its way back. Walk through a car meet today, and you'll see it happening all over again, just wearing a different outfit. Massive gatherings like Cruisin' the Coast or the Woodward Dream Cruise pull in millions of people, rows of restored classics stretching further than the eye can follow. Teenagers who've never known a world without a phone in their pocket walk up to a stranger's 1967 Mustang and ask if they can take a look under the hood, the same way kids did on that same stretch of road 60 years earlier. The old man behind the wheel usually just smiles and pops it open for them. It isn't about picking up a date on a Friday night anymore. It's about something a little different, but not so far removed. It's the feeling of your hand on a manual shifter. It's the smell of warm engine oil and old vinyl seats. It's standing next to a stranger's car and somehow understanding each other without needing to say much at all. Because if you strip away the chrome and the fins and the neon, cruising was never really about the cars themselves. It was about the freedom of being 16 or 17 with a full tank of gas and absolutely nowhere you had to be. It was about becoming, just for one night a week, whoever you wanted to be behind that windshield. The golden age may not fill a Friday night calendar the way it used to, but the spirit never really left. It's still there every time somebody pops a hood just to let a stranger look, every time an old engine turns over on the first try, every time a driver takes a left down a road they've driven 1,000 times before, just to see what it feels like one more time. Because somewhere out there tonight, there's still a strip waiting to be cruised. All it takes is dropping it into gear, rolling the window down, and going.